Hello everyone, Jay here from JAAD Productions, back with another video. So this one I'm a little late to the party on, just because it took me a little bit by surprise. It came out real late, and I was heading to bed, and I had a quick peruse of it. And we're looking at the newest preview for Age of Sigmar, talking about the Nurgle Maggotkin book, and one of the rules, and they've shared with us a really interesting rule that I want to just more pose a question to anyone watching this, what they think of it, as well as just go over it in general, because it's one of those things of, I like the core concept behind it, but I can see it being a little bit annoying and bloaty. Anyway, let's jump into it and have a look at it. So, deep in the Garden of Nurgle, blah 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 stuff. GW tends to not know the lore as well as most other people do outside of it. Anyway, each Maggotkin diseased. So each of the Maggotkin is a walking vector of disease, a willing incubator for maladies that ravage the body and spirit with horrific virulence. At the end of the movement phase, and at the end of the combat phase. So twice. So give one disease point to each enemy unit that is within 3 inches of any friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle units. A unit can only have a maximum of 7 disease points at any time. It cannot be given any more until the number of disease points it has is reduced to less than 7. So this first part took me a few things few reads to actually notice stuff here. And I've just noticed something else again. So it's at the end of the movement phase and the combat phase. So if you have a unit, you're potentially giving them, if you're already stuck, so if you manage to charge them, you'll give them 1 at the end of the combat. And if you're already stuck in, you'll give them 2. Okay. I hope you have a lot of counters for this. In the same way that I made counters for my Aether Gold, this is certainly something that I think you'd have to make counters for. I like to use spare bases to make counters, but that was for my very specific Aether Gold, because I was treating them like poker chips or, gold tokens. But yeah, so my immediate thought is you're gonna need tokens, so many tokens, lots and lots of tokens, some way to count this. Some good things. TNT Laserworks come to mind. Anyone who makes markers, any of the adjustable counters, they're all good. I'm not sponsored by anyone, these are just legit suggestions. Fortunately, they only can have a max of 7, but if you are engaging multiple things across the board, with multiple units in each combat, let's see, is it give 1 disease point to each enemy unit? So that's a lot of keeping track of disease points. I hope this replaces the wheel, actually. For those who don't know, the Maggotkin previously had their Wheel of Corruption, or Cycle of Corruption, which was essentially, it rotated on a wheel between 1 to 7. You roll at the start of the game to see where you started on, and you would proceed basically clockwise around this wheel every turn, unless you rolled a dice. It was an okay mechanic. It helped that you could change it with a spell, but, it wasn't anything super fabulous. I was a fan of it, but it certainly had some very lackluster options on it. But that's fine enough of itself. But just like that, this looks like a lot of bookkeeping. Gosh, I hope they don't do a Skitarii. I hope they don't do what they did to my AdMech Codex and make this an army where you have to have 4 pages of bookkeeping on separate notes before you even get to do anything with your army in the command phase. Okay, so, look, complexity in armies is great. It's a matter of execution. Now this, I think so long as you got the counters, is fine. And that's the question I want to pose to people at the end of this after we look through the rest of this. So, at the start of the Battle Shock phase, for each disease point that an enemy unit has, so you're going to be rolling lots of stuff, lots of interaction in the Battle Shock phase, more than just normal, if you're playing the Maggotkin, which I like that it's in the Battle Shock phase. It's usually a rather empty phase where it's either, alright, they're either running, or they're not running, or there's a low chance that they're running, and the guys who are guaranteed running, Inspiring Presence. unless I got baited into spending all my command points. So you roll 1 dice for each enemy unit. You must make 1 dice roll. Sorry. At the start of the battle shock phase, for each disease point that an enemy unit has, you make 1 dice roll, called a disease roll. For each 4+, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. At the end of the battle shock phase, reduce the number of disease points each enemy has to 1. So it doesn't go to 0, they're permanently diseased. So it goes to 1. So you just keep building up. So by the looks, the idea appears to be that over time, even if your attacks aren't great, that you can bleed them out with mortal wounds through attrition. Because typically as Nurgle, you'd hope that you're more durable than your opponent. Typically, this is a reason why historically Nurgle units had high toughness, high wounds, feel no pains, ward saves, ignoring wounds mechanics, those kinds of terminologies. So there is, and healing, plentiful access to healing. So there is that. So this looks kind of cool for a very attrition-y kind of play style. Again, I worry about the amount of work, especially when you read about the number of ways you can do it. But if this is like the primary mechanic around which the entire army is built, then you know getting into it you're going to need lots and lots of markers, which you can, get your hands on or make yourself, that kind of thing. I don't think it's too much of a concern, really. The 4+ is pretty good. I like that it's on a 4+. So with 7 dice, your mathematical average with a 4+ is half of those. So you're looking at anywhere between 3 to 4 mortal wounds if you have a full 7 stack. So that's not bad. It's not bad at all. This is definitely something. It's gonna be much more deadly to monsters. I see that straight up. If you can pile these on, monsters tend to have far more vulnerabilities to mortal wounds in general. I wonder how it would affect war machines, because there's no stipulation here about it not affecting anything. So, putting it on things like the Caradron's boats, you can potentially just be counteracting any healing going on there. So I do like that. I don't see it being as effective against swarms unless you can bump that roll up to maybe a 3+, but only being capped at 7 dice with 7 disease points is not bad. This is definitely something that's going to be countered by mass units, where when you're doing that, you're just going to be relying on good old-fashioned number of attacks to kill them, and this is just an extra cherry on top to hopefully, not only when they break in Battle Shock will they lose some guys, but then they'll also lose some guys to disease attrition. So that's interesting. So, that's right, don't even know what this means. So, are they indicating something here? Is this? Oh, right, because Death Guard contagions, right? Which are not bad. I actually kind of like those. I was half expecting something like that. So, then you have this, which they show, diseased weapons. Just one of many ways with which to add disease points. So if an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a missile weapon or melee weapon from a friendly Maggotkin of Nurgle model is 6, the attack inflicts 1 disease point on the target unit in addition to any damage. I'd be curious to find what that's on. I'm expecting a few different things. I'm expecting most of the weapons will probably have this. If not all of them will probably have this, I reckon. Especially your I've had a mind blank on the Chaos Demons of Nurgle, and I should know this as someone who has them right over on my shelf over there. Pox, Bringer, Plague, Walkers, god. Plague Bearers. I expect Plague Bearers and all the Plague Bearer variants will probably have this. If this is a replacement to the Maggotkin Mortals, the Blight Lords, and their Plague Weapons, which previously had 6s to hit, became D6 hits, I'm going to be sad to see that lost. It was very swingy, but very interesting, and gave them, they could either do really low amounts of damage, or they could blister their way through a bunch of guys. That's an interesting thing. I wouldn't actually mind if it replaced it, I don't think, on an initial glance of this rule. And of course, they talk about there is more than other ways, so abilities and spells. Now, when I first read this, I was kind of confused and concerned. So, the confusion quickly wore off as I just read the rules more times, so now I understand it. The only concern comes from, do you think this is a well-designed rule? And this is a question to people watching this. Do you like this rule? Do you think it's okay? Are you concerned about the number of bookkeeping? Are you, like, what do you think of this rule as a standpoint? Is this an excellent way to represent the diseased and befouled nature of Nurgle's weapons? Is it right to make people do this amount of counting? Is this the kind of rule you want to see? Because it's a very interesting rule. I think it's a very interestingly designed rule. I do. I'm not sure if I think it's the most efficient and elegant rule, but it's definitely an interesting and unique rule that at least feels interesting to look at and think about. On the tabletop, its execution might be a little messy, which is what has me kind of confused and why I'm asking this. So this is really it. Now, there's not a whole lot else to talk about. I could talk about in this video the new Gene Stealer Cult's Crossfire thing. I think that's a little overdone as far as the rules go, but just about everything in 9th edition is either completely overdone or boring, flavorless video game bland shit. It makes me feel like I'm playing in a StarCraft esport and not a miniature wargame. But that is a different video for another time. So yeah, tell me what you think. I'm going to keep this one nice and short. I've been Jay from JAAD Productions. See you next time.